Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albert. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years.
Melissa, last week, one of my employees, Ray, came to me and he goes, hey JJ, did you see the email I sent? I was like, no, what was in your email, Ray? And he goes, yeah, I had to send an apology email to my team.
Oh.
And he wanted to talk about his apology email. And, you know, anytime you have to send an apology email to your team, that's probably not a super good thing.
Yeah.
But
right.
So we talked through what happened, and he exhibited an amazing amount of self-awareness.
Yeah, right.
After the event, maybe not during, but I thought it was really interesting what he was talking about. So, what he had to apologize for was he heads up our engineering team, right? So,
right.
The team of software engineers, and since he's the lead software engineer, you know, he often gets the most gnarly, difficult technical problems to solve. Like when the team gets stuck, they go to Ray, right?
Got it.
And Ray's able to figure everything out. Well, he was in a very deep technical rabbit hole, we call it.
That sounds terrible.
You know, where his brain was loaded with all of this information, and he's really working on you know, troubleshooting, figuring things out, and everything. Yeah. And he looked up, and he's like, "Ooh, I got a meeting like right now." And so he stopped what he was doing, and he hopped into a management meeting where they were talking about like marketing and product positioning and stuff that was just a little bit more human than his computer code.
Yeah.
And they were even talking about some of the, you know, customer interactions and employee interactions. So it was just a much more human conversation. And he basically couldn't engage and kind of acted like an ass. Right?
Yeah.
That's his own words.
Yeah. Nice.
I wasn't calling
nice
him out for being an ass. Yeah. But then, so he was reflecting. He's like, "Hey, JJ, I don't know what happened. Like, that's a normal management meeting I can be in, but for some reason, I just acted terribly in that meeting, and I felt terrible. So we got into talking about that particular scenario, like when you have to switch from one task to another.
That's very interesting, especially when the task is using completely different parts of your brain and regarding completely different things, right?
Yeah.
Like a single tasking, really technical effort when you're just in your own head, no one else is invited.
Right. Yep.
Right? Like
no one else is invited.
No one else is. No one else is invited. Well, then and he's a very technical person in addition, and a little on the quieter side too, right?
Yep. Yeah, he's a technical introvert, so
yeah, right.
We get along.
So you could drive all the way out to Las Vegas to go rock climbing and never say a word.
It's amazing.
No, but I think that's a really common thing, right? When you are somebody who is even an introvert, or if you're like really into your own activity, your own brain activity, sometimes it feels really invasive to have a meeting in which you have to shift gears. And even though you're shifting gears because it's your job, you know, you need to, it's with people you know, sometimes it can be really annoying and feel really invasive.
Yeah, annoying. And there's a couple of things happening there. Like, especially when you're in that much detail, it's like you don't want to stop, right? And
Yeah. Yeah,
I
you're in a
felt that when
flow.
I've been doing, yeah, you're in a flow, right? And so
Yeah.
that might be a technical job like Ray was doing, but it could be,
Mhm.
for me, often it's like an artistic, sort of
Yeah.
creative job. Like if I'm in the creative flow and
Yeah.
I get interrupted
Yeah.
with that, I get real grumpy. Like I can't, or, um, and this actually will sometimes happen uh, at home if like I'm working on something creative and then my wife wants me to like go do, whatever, help cook dinner or something. I have a
Yeah.
real hard time to like switching from that creative work to just to a different activity because my brain just doesn't let it go. My brain
Yeah.
just keeps cranking on the last thing I was on, um,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah,
can't
because you've got all this
switch.
good momentum going, because there's a lot of momentum
Yeah,
going. And I
oh,
think
that's a
too,
good
it's
way to
like,
phrase it. There's momentum.
yeah, and it's momentum in something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
in the workplace, most of us are in roles that we came to because we liked certain key components of it, if not all of it, right? Like I'm in this job because I really, really like this. I'm in accounting because I
Yeah.
really, really like spreadsheets. I'm in sales because I really, really like people. So it's really easy for your energy to flow in the direction of something that you really like. And then,
Yep.
especially in leadership or management, when you have to come out of that flow and you're faced with the other parts of the job that are not as easy, and they don't create energy for you like that, like you were just describing. That act of creation gives you energy,
Yep.
right? um it can feel really, well, darn right annoying.
Yeah.
But
Well, and
then, like, look at poor Ray, because he recognized that, but then he realized that he wasn't proud of his behavior when he had to switch that energy.
right, so there that
Hmm.
like guilt comes right behind
Yeah.
it,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
He must have
Well,
obviously been feeling guilty because he called to tell you.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. Again, I was just so impressed. I was like, I told him like, Ray, we're using this on a podcast because this is an impressive amount of like awareness and a great growth opportunity. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so when we were talking about it with him, I decided like, okay, like so we talked about what can we do about that, right? I think we all
Mm.
understand and have felt this context switch that we have to do.
Yeah.
So how are we going to make it so we don't have to write apology letters to our coworkers?
Yeah. Well, don't you think too, like, yeah, I mean, we want to get out ahead of that stuff all the time, right? And that's why you and I are
Yeah.
so all over the self-awareness journey, and why we get so excited about it, because we know that that really makes a difference. That
Yeah.
really makes a
Yep.
difference. Recognizing
Yep.
yourself and understanding why you behave a certain way, is a huge way out of that
Well,
hole that you feel you dug.
yeah. Let's talk about that for just a second,
Yeah.
because from a couple perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Um, Again, this is kind of like why we think self-awareness is so important, and why when
Mm-hmm.
I see it happen, I'm so
Yeah.
proud of it, is because there's a couple of things. Uh, it's making Ray feel like crap, right? Like he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, he kind of
Yeah.
wasn't out ahead of it, and the after effect of that was just he
Right.
personally feeling
Right.
bad.
Right.
Um, from a business perspective, and we talk about self-awareness, I think a lot of people will think about this kind of stuff as like obviously it's
Yeah.
a personal growth thing,
Yeah.
but I think it's really important in our work context because for
Totally.
me, as the CEO of this business, I want
Mm-hmm.
all high performing people.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the number one thing that derails our high performance is this kind of stuff, right?
Exactly right.
Is an employee acts out in a meeting, everyone else is a little upset, no one really does any work the rest of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
The team dynamics get a little screwy for a little,
Yep.
like a day or two until someone apologizes, and then it all
Yeah.
goes back to normal, right? So there's all these like little
Mm-hmm.
speed bumps
Oh, that's a
that
good word.
occur that just slow us down.
Right.
And they're not ill-intentioned. No one's
No.
purposely trying to be mean or anything like that. But there's just all of these interactions because business is complicated. The relationships of business is complicated. It's
Right.
okay. It
Mm-hmm.
happens. But if we can just do a little bit of work for everybody in the organization
Yeah.
around self-awareness, we can smooth out some of these speed bumps.
Well, it's already happening. Like there's been so many, even in the few short months that we've been at this, 9 or 10 months now, I don't really remember, the feedback that I've been getting, and I suppose I'm in a position in my role being an executive coach and working with a whole bunch of different companies and people that are sort of engaged in this process of self-awareness. The feedback is just heartwarming because it's subtle. These are subtle little things that with very little effort, people are now seeing why they do what they do. It isn't just about, oh, I acted, I don't know where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
Now people are really easily making little shifts like, okay, now I get that. Like, I love doing this and I hate doing that. And I had to go do that thing I didn't like. And I was still mad because it wasn't done doing this thing that I love. Like in this example,
Mm-hmm.
something that simple can make
Yeah.
a huge difference because next time, you know, he won't do that,
Yeah.
which is
Right.
really
And
awesome.
everything
You know,
will be
we
a little
talk about
smoother,
that and we can
right?
make it sound like it's this big,
And we'll
oh,
perform
you know,
better.
yeah, he'll perform better and he will feel better in the
Yeah, and
performance. He will
that's
feel better.
and that's key for me too, is like I want everybody, to feel good about the work that they're doing,
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
Because having an organization where people come into work and hate their job every day is not one that I want to make.
Mm-hmm.
I want to create a culture where everyone feels supported, does their best work, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and it feels good to come to work.
I think there's a component of this too that's interesting to pay attention to. I always use buzz phrases. I know maybe I should stop doing that, but like taking your inventory. Like what I mean when I say that is like in that situation, whether it was before, during, or after Ray had his behavior piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before, during, or after, I wonder if at any time he just checked in with himself to see if he was really tired.
Mm.
I think sometimes we get tired, and I think the medium that most of us are working in our environments right now is over Zoom or Microsoft Teams or, computer to computer. We're not doing much face-to-face. And I think there's a level of tiredness just getting by doing that, the constant sitting at your desk, not doing your normal getting up and moving around. Like it all creates a little more of a heavy atmosphere to be able to feel rested, to feel flexible. And I think when you're more tired, at least when I'm tired, I'm not as flexible at all because I just don't have the bandwidth,
Yeah. Well, there's some interesting things happening that I observe. Actually, I observe with my own calendar with the online, like the completely remote worker thing, is that my calendar has been getting, I would say, denser, more and more dense.
Mine
Like the
too.
time between meetings
Yeah.
is zero.
Yeah.
Like it'll be back to back because like you don't need, when we're at the office, you needed time to like go from one conference room to the other or like, go kind of physically move around, and it took a bit of time. So you couldn't ever stack meetings straight back to back. Well, in our online world, like something just happened where all the meetings just whoop, now they're back to back. Like my meeting ends at 9:30 a.m. and one starts at 9:30 a.m. and I just like switch, and it's super fast.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give me any time
Yeah.
to like recover, reflect, prepare, which I think is causing, certainly was the root cause of Ray's problem is he scheduled activities way too tight.
Yeah. And that's really hard too, because I think, again, everybody's having all these emotions and feelings about how they're doing their work right now. And those emotions and feelings can be a real drag on our energy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're bringing them with us everywhere, and we're trying to figure out how to look and feel as successful, look and feel as productive as we always have.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, I think we're in production mode way, way, way more. So then when you do get interrupted to transition to be with new people for a new conversation, even if you love those people, even if you're an extrovert, even if all these things, right? It's still tiring. It's still hard.
Yeah.
So I think energy has a lot to do with that ability to switch back and forth between that, internal mindset project that you're trying to work on, shifting into interacting with other people requires a totally different kind of energy. And I like what you're saying. You're right. When there's no transition time, that's
hard.
Impossible. Yeah. By
Yeah.
Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're just fried.
Yeah. I wonder, so like I've always been a big remote work advocate. I mean, our company has been doing remote work for many, many, many years.
Right.
So for us, we have a little bit different view on it at this point. It's I want to say like we're a more mature remote
working
work
environment
team, right? Like because we've been doing it for so long. So things that happen, I think, in general, is that since remote work is new for so many companies, and there was a lot of anxiety around like, ooh, are our workers, are our employees going to be effective? Are they going to just work from home and like screw around the whole time, right? Like the old management view of like if you can't see it, you can't manage it, right? Like that whole thing. So what I feel like happened for a lot of people is they started working from home and then they actually went too far on the like, I must be attached to my desk, never leave it, and be highly productive because everyone thinks I'm not going to be, right?
I totally
So it's like
agree.
the pendulum swung super far the other way, right? Where people are actually not really taking care of themselves, not really giving the kind of time between meetings and activities like they should be, right? Because in the office environment, again, it was like you'd walk between meetings, you'd bump into somebody, you'd chit chat for a bit, you'd go get coffee. There was just this whole cadence around how things worked. And I think it was generally slower and gave more time between activities than this compressed remote environment. So I think it's okay for everyone to say, hey, you know what? I don't schedule meetings back to back. I put time in between them, right?
Right.
For me, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I really like what you're saying, and even if you aren't fully in control of your calendar, because there are a lot of our listeners who other people can add things to their calendar willy-nilly. If you've got access to their calendar, you also have access to go ahead and put a meeting on their calendar. And I think what you're saying, it's not just you saying, I personally don't do that to my calendar, but also having the courage to say, you put this on my calendar back to back and I don't do back to back meetings. I will enter into that meeting 15 minutes later and holding that line.
Yeah, definitely.
You're laughing because you'd never, I know you're laughing because you'd never let anybody put anything on your calendar.
No, I was going to say, well, I don't let a person put stuff on my calendar. I let a computer robot put stuff on my calendar. No, I use, you joke, but you laugh at it's true. No, I was going to say, my technique for this is, and I actually started doing it more recently, is like, so I use like some software that just like, I send someone a link, right? And then they can pick a time that I'm free to have a meeting with me.
Right,
which
right, right.
works awesome, by the way. Like, we use one from HubSpot. There's one called Calendly. Like,
Yeah.
if yeah, you're not using one of these things, you should get
Yeah.
it because it's
And
awesome.
they're free. Like there's a free version of the
Yeah, they're
Calendly
generally
anyway.
free. They're great. So I send everyone a link. But part of the rules you can set up for that booking, for that automatic booking, is how much gap time do you need between
Oh.
events on your calendar.
Huh.
So
I didn't know that.
mine is 15 minutes. So there's a lot. So when someone picks a time, they can't pick a slot in my calendar that is actually back to back for me. It
Ah.
forces 15 minutes between all events,
Huh.
which is really helpful.
Yeah. So I like what you're saying, like in any way, shape, or form, if you can, like if you're just feeling yourself getting too bombarded, to take back control of putting some gaps even in between the things that are scheduled. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you may not be able to feel like you can get full control of everything, right? And create the perfect conditions for yourself, because that probably doesn't exist, but there's sure certain things that you can do to make it easier, and that would be one of them. It's like give yourself that mental break to prepare to close down
Yeah.
from emotionally one meeting and to go into the next one. I like
Yep,
that.
for sure. Yep. And if I'm doing some like technical work or some real detailed work or
Yeah.
even creative work, I time block it on my calendar. I schedule it. I'm like, I'm going to do this for 2 hours,
Yeah.
but then I don't let something like hit the end of it right real tight, right?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
so
That's
this is
good.
just time management techniques, right? That just give
Yeah.
yourself, because you just have to say like my brain just and everyone's brain just
Yeah.
can't switch energy that fast.
Right. Even
Right?
if you think you're a great thinker. Yeah.
Yep.
It's an
Yep.
energy thing. It really is. How about checking in with the room, or checking in on the Zoom with everybody's faces, like before you kind of jump right in, like giving yourself a little extra minute even in the entry point of the meeting.
Totally. The well, one of my first checks in that way, basic, like a baseline kind of thing, is like who else is in this meeting? Who else is in
Yeah.
the room, right? Um,
Yeah.
and like just know them a little bit, right? Like I know
Yes.
that the extroverts of the room are going to really want to talk through a problem. And if I just came out of something where I was real deep as an introvert, I do not want to talk at all. Right? so so I just have to kind of know where I just came from, what everyone else probably needs, and just be a little prepared for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The way I can prepare for that is actually I just write down on my notebook real quick, what are a couple of the questions that I need to ask to get this team talking?
Oh,
That's
that's
about it.
interesting. Yeah.
You
And
know?
you know what I do for my technique? What I do is when somebody's face comes up on the screen, I just sit there for a minute, because I've set my own intention for my energy for my meeting every
hmm
time. Every time I do that. Like I just want to be open and relaxed and calm and be a good listener and ask good questions and generally be pleasant. Like I want to be a pleasant place. So
hmm
I check in with the other person or people if there's more than one, and I just sort of look at the body language. Like, are people looking down? Do they seem like they're just like they're checking into a meeting because they know they're supposed to? Are they looking at the screen? And I will just
Is
ask
there
a
a chicken
question.
on their lap?
Stop judging me.
That's Melissa. Folks, Melissa. Sometimes I call her and she literally has a chicken on her lap.
Not
Like,
just
oh,
random
I see how the
chickens.
energy of this
Just
meeting is going to be.
we will have discussions on another podcast because I just bought her a little camo saddle, but that's a different story. But I do think it's really important to read the room or read the screen. You know, it's just like, how is everybody else doing? Because they're probably having the exact same struggles that you are, you know?
Yeah. We've been talking about like a lot about the work scenario. So like let's switch a little bit into some different spots where
Oh,
this
yeah.
happens.
Yeah, yeah, good
So
idea.
like first, like from work back to home, right? So many of us had like a commute home
Yeah.
for so long where we could take like that time and switch
Right.
from like sort of our work context back to our home.
Yeah.
But now my commute is up this half flight of stairs, so it's not super long, so it doesn't give me a lot of time to switch.
It's not enough for emotional and mental reset.
No, not really. I remember one day I was like really, I don't know what we were doing. It was like we're in a management meeting and we're just real tactical and we're blocking and tackling, doing everything. I walked upstairs and something was going on with the kids, right? And I was just in manager mode, right? So I'm like, it's just like, everyone sit down, we're having a meeting, blah, blah, right? And my wife goes, because JJ, you can't manage our family like you manage your business. And I was like, oh, right. So there is an example of me not switching very effectively.
No, I like what you're saying, though, because I think there's a lot of times when we do have to make a shift, and we know we do. And I think so often we try to just mentally take that shift, but we don't check in with our feelings about it. You know, we say, okay, now I'm going to be, I got to switch hats. I'm going to change my head. I'm not going to think about this now because I said I was going to stop working and it's, whatever. We do that. We do a lot of that self-talk.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important, too, to do an emotional check-in. Like, all right, I want to be home now. I want to be in my personal time now. So I just feel tired, and that's okay for me to honor that piece of me. And maybe I just need to think about how I can do something to feel good for a couple of minutes here, make that transition.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, no, we're calling out Ray a lot during this podcast. This one's all about him. But he actually even talked to me about how, like for him, he actually lives on the East Coast. Generally, our business is operating on Central Time.
Oh, right.
So he actually gets pushed sometimes a little later in his day for work stuff.
Yeah.
And then he has to go right upstairs to dinner with his kids. And he also, we've talked about how he struggles with that transition. The other one I think is interesting, and I've experienced this, is like when you're having people over, like maybe you're hosting like a family dinner, a holiday, or just some friends.
Yeah.
For me, I do a lot of the cooking. And so when I'm in like cooking mode, I have really hard time getting out of cooking mode and into like cocktail party mode.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, that's very funny. Yeah, I'm the same way.
So like even in social situations, you kind of should be like aware that maybe in a social situation, you're actually switching between different kinds of tasks and energy. Yep. Even in social situations. And just know thyself, right? Like understanding how you're going to respond and react to things before you actually do have to is so helpful, because it's just how you're wired, and it gives you give yourself a chance to just be good with that, Yeah. Like, so, well, this is what I'm going to need, and then I can have the best time possible, and I'll probably be a lot more fun to be around. Yeah. Usually in those situations, all the introverts gather in the kitchen and just get to work and don't say anything. And then all extroverts go like out in the living room and we're like, cackling it up.
And
it works out for everybody.
Shout into the kitchen. What are we eating?
What are we eating?
Don't ask me how I know this.
Well, this is a great conversation. I really like this because, again, it has impact on personal, professional. It kind of makes life a little smoother, and it's one of those like subtle things that if you're looking out for it, it's pretty easy to deal with, but you just kind of have to be aware of it and be watching out for those energy shifts.
And don't make yourself feel guilty if one day you don't, and then you realize it later. It's all part of the learning process. Like we always learn first by recognizing something after the fact. Like that's just how it is. And that's
take
totally
pride
normal.
Take pride in those apology emails.
Exactly. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.